What's up? It's me, Brianca Jay, and welcome back to my channel. I have missed you guys so much. It's unreal. Again, I'm going to just continue our series. So today I'm going to talk about psychoanalysis. But before we get started, go ahead and you know what to do. If you like, comment, and subscribe, my channel grows. Make sure you subscribe, guys. It really helps me a lot. Also, I do have a children's book out as well as merch available on my website at www.briancajay.com. Really go check that out. Support me if you can. Look through my services. I'm actually thinking about extending the website to like cater to you guys. So in addition to BookTube, I'll drop some of my academic papers on the website so that you guys can have something to refer to and do that. So if you guys like that idea, subscribe, leave me a comment, let me know that's what you want to see more of, and I'll make that happen for you. Without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so psychoanalysis. So the findings of psychoanalysis filter into literary and cultural criticism and theory, providing a battery of terms, concepts, and problems that reach beyond those critics who describe themselves as psychoanalytic. So let's get into it. So what we need to know, the human psyche consists of unconscious and conscious spheres, and most of its contents lodge out of sight in the unconscious and covered by a relatively smaller and less dense consciousness. So most of what we think, do, and feel lives somewhere in our subconscious or unconscious, and then we only deal with the things that we know. We just know so very little. So the key to the dark and accessible unconscious lie within our dreams, our fantasies, our slips of tongue, our free association, all help us to reveal those deeply buried, repressed, and self-centered wishes that we have. So it's the slips of tongue. They always say that thing like the drunk mind, a drunk man tells no tales, or a drunk mind is a sober tongue. It's kind of like that. When you start, people get a little comfortable on a little wine and get telling you what they really think, and you like, oh, bet. Yeah, so it's that. The task of the psychoanalyst is, with the help of the patient, of course, to make sense of dream text. And they argue that nonsense is meaningful and that distortion is inescapable and creative. So even though your dream seems to make no sense to you, it has a really deep, important message trying to like connect to you through the divine. So by decoding the symbols, they prove that they can illuminate, at least to critics, some of those ideas that are notable for Carl Jung, who have made inventories of archetypes, universal symbols such as the garden and the desert, such as water and fire, the hero and the monster, the river journey and the ordeal, the birth and the death. They all believe that all of this is stored in our human psyche and is universal. So you have these universal archetypes. If you haven't watched the video yet about the hero's journey, you'll learn more about the archetype from that video. Back to what I'm saying now. So many highly influential modern and postmodern theories of literature are indebted to psychoanalysis and its foundational concept of the unconscious. They have two people that they really respect here. That is Harold Bloom, and he wrote The Anxiety of Influence. And then there's the French feminisms, can't say it, but it illustrates the richness and complexity of psychoanalytic theories. So prior to the neoclassical and romantic periods, literary influence was mostly entirely based in the case of subjective lyric poem as a major genre. And I've talked about this before. If you watched the video on the romantic period, we talked about how they were really into that genre of the lyric poem. From here, they're moving forward, and they start to involve the aspiring poet's primal repression of the precursor, plus a series of later psychological defenses that this parent figure, including masochistic reversals, sublimitations, interjections, regressions, and projections. So the idea here is like, though they kept thinking that they were being really creative and was like, screw anybody that came before us, I'm going to do me, the psychoanalyst argues that you are still, in trying to kill your darling, you are actually honoring your darling, because you are kind of like mimicking these behaviors. Or even the idea of being the opposite of your predecessor is still a way of paying homage to your predecessor, right? So he kind of argues that, like, even though you're trying to say you really hate the poetry and the people that came and paved the way before you, you're still very grateful, or else, one, you wouldn't even be trying to prove yourself as different, and two, you wouldn't even know who they were, and you wouldn't have a lane. You got a lane, so you still are paying homage. So even the person, in layman terms, even a person who hates their parents still is indebted to their parents because they wouldn't be here without them. Same thing in this particular instance here. So Bloom has been criticized for focusing on competition instead of collaboration. He argues that for favoring canonical poets over less well-known poets, and for admitting nearly all writing by women, but Bloom's critics have rarely questioned the usefulness of his theoretical understanding of distortion or of unconscious repression. And these ideas are still used widely throughout this field. According to some of the theories, an infant most successfully completes various stages of development, oral, anal, and oedipal, to ensure later psychological well-being. In the oedipal stage, the male child must separate from the mother and identify with the father on his way to the symbolic order. The Oedipus complex is displayed by those males whose failure to negotiate the oedipal stage of development leaves them deeply attached to their mothers and often feeling rivalry to their fathers. And the feminist effort to reconceive the pre-oedipal sphere as a highly positive source of creativity and liberation, rather than simply an infantile domain of irrational instincts that we must abandon. So together they decide that yes, the Oedipal complex is a real thing, it really happens, but it allows people to like grow and create and make art, and it's like really helpful even though deeply complex. It's duality, of course. The last thing you need to know about psychoanalysis is that the Freudian theory subjugates the disruptive unconscious with its often antisocial desires and flows to the hegemonic order of the patriarchal family, the rule of law, and the capitalist economy. Freud's psychoanalysis, focused as it is on the Oedipal triangle, is unable to acknowledge the truly complex nature of subjectivity. So, an open-ended process of becoming in which multiple contradictory positions and roles coexist and clash. So basically, they're like, listen, yes, you can study the unconscious and the subconscious and all these different spheres, but the reality is that the human brain, the literary world, and you yourself and me included are all very, very complex individuals, and you can't just limit us to, well, you know, she grew up without a father. Like that, it's not going to be enough to really understand the deeply complex mindset of the human being. And that's why we do psychoanalysis, to really get down to the nitty deep, gritty ideas of what is going on in this book with this character, with the writer in itself. And that's psychoanalysis if you need it in a nutshell. I hope this video was helpful to you. If it was, leave me a comment, give me a like, subscribe if you can. If you can't, well, I will understand that someday. But overall, it was great talking to y'all. Thank you for having me back, and I'll see you next time. Make sure you go to www.briancajay.com and make sure you get a copy of my children's book, and check out my nephew in the next clip.
My name is Lee Bite. My nanny read a book about me. Buy the book. Please.
You
buy my nanny book, I will punch your face.